Welcome to another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum, where all voices matter. Our monthly guest is back with us today, Thomas Caldwell. He is the founder of Caldwell Securities Limited in Toronto. Tom, welcome back to the program.
I was just thinking of your intro, your monthly gust, like a blow of wind.
Gust, guest, it's,
Anyway, I'll go with that. That's okay.
whatever works, whatever works. Obviously, one of the things is obvious on the state of mind of all of our viewers is the state of the global economy after 6 weeks of war in the Middle East. Yeah, why don't you give us your assessment of things?
Well, the world adjusts to whatever the reality is. It will adjust, whether it be higher oil prices in the U.S. or being subjugated to the abuse and cajoling of Mr. Trump, or higher prices in Asia. Um, some oil tankers are permitted to get through the straits, which is kind of I think they're taking the alternative route, which doesn't preclude the straits being mined. So there's a lot going on, but we are adjusting, and everybody. We sort of every day you wonder what Mr. Trump is going to come up with today. It's going to
Mhm.
end soon, or we're really going to. They put a tremendous number of troops and logistics in place to do a lot more. Now, whether that's bluster and threat or whether that's real, nobody can tell, and I'm not sure even Mr. Trump knows. It depends on the day, of course. So you're really managing against a backdrop of almost insanity, if you will. But the point is, the world and the world economies and companies adjust, and that's the beauty of the free enterprise system. And so we'll deal with it, whether it lasts for 1 week or 10 weeks. We just don't know. And
Right.
and like there's no script to war. Any fool can start one. You just don't know quite how they're going to end up.
Right, but of course, there are short-term consequences. Any of us who are pumping gas know that. There's also long-term consequences in terms of fertilizer and costs of living other than oil and gas. So, where do you see this going?
Well, wars burn up assets, primarily in people and then in resources. They are inflationary. And Iran is fighting back really the only way it can by sort of horizontally escalating, bringing everybody else into this conflict and giving everyone else a cost, hopefully to put pressure on Mr. Trump to call it a day. And I think there's a degree of pressure on him in the United States as well. Now, he gave a speech last night, really didn't say anything new. It just, I love it when they say our original reason for doing this was, when they say that as a preamble, they've switched off the original reason,
Right, right.
from a
Yeah.
regime change to no, what we meant was, and you in politics and me in business, I've changed my opinion many times. And I said, no, you misunderstood what I was saying.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
happened. So you're seeing some of that, but these consequences, fertilizer, food prices, it'll percolate through the system, but we're just going to adjust through this interim period. Now, this interim period may last longer than we think, but he's got enough pressure on that he wants to end it. And I think, frankly, the Iranians want it to end somehow or whether. As it is, they're making money by charging a toll going through the straits now.
Right, yeah, which of course Trump doesn't want to see as a long-term benefit to Iran. So we'll see where that one ends up. The other party in the Middle East who are suffering a little bit are the UAE. Of course, they've had all of their a lot of their infrastructure has been targeted by Iran. So that kind of stuff takes years to build back, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. I don't know what kind of infrastructure they're actually blowing up. I said to the Qatari ambassador to England many years ago, the government flew me over there to discuss capital markets. And I said, if there's anything more dangerous than being America's enemy, it's being their friend. Either they turn on their friends, and the UAE is now being disabused of the fact by
Mhm.
forming an alliance with the US and giving them these bases is going to protect them. Well, it hasn't done. The missiles are being lobbed at them as well. And you can understand it from a war point of view. Iran saying, well, it's like you're taking off from this base in Qatar or Dubai. And there's a big base just outside of Dubai. I know, I've been there, Camp Mirage. It doesn't exist.
Right.
Huge runway for big planes.
Been there
And
too. Been there too. Yeah.
they're targeting these. So, that's to be expected in a war environment. It expands beyond your expectations.
Yeah, no, there's I'm sure there's a lot of talk about the costs of these things. We'll talk about that a little bit more after the break, and then we'll shift to some other issues as well that are more pertinent to the Canadian economy, perhaps. We'll be back with our guest after these messages. And welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with Thomas Caldwell. He is the chairman of Caldwell Securities Limited in Toronto. Tom, one more question just about the war in the Middle East, epic fury or whatever you want to call it. Uh, a lot of commentators are saying that the biggest winner out of all of this is Russia, both in terms of economy and geopolitics. And any comments on that?
Well, again, going back to your point of short-term, long-term, short-term, yeah, absolutely yes, because they've released them from this embargo because the world needs their oil. So not only are they shipping oil, they're shipping oil at a significantly higher price. But there's other things going on. A lot of the settlement on this oil now is not being done in U.S. dollars. So there's a shift here that is beneath the surface, and that's the moving away from the dollar as a petro-currency. So people are settling in other currencies, particularly Iran is settling in other currencies. So that could be a predecessor to the US being moved back a notch or two as the world currency. But Russia is definitely benefiting short term. And they're given a pass. They're targeting American targets for the Iranians. And Trump is saying nothing about this because he's trying to maintain or obviously have a relationship with Mr. Putin. So he's letting them off the hook. He likes to beat up on NATO and his pals. But the point is the Russians are helping the other side as far as America goes,
Yeah,
and they're getting a pass on that and
they are.
benefiting from it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'd like to turn a little bit closer to home if I could. One of the things that happened last week was that the Alberta-Canada Memorandum of Understanding, that deals with the development of resources and, just generally how to price carbon, these kinds of issues are in the MOU. It missed a couple of deadlines on April the 1st, particularly on carbon pricing and carbon capture issues. I don't know whether you've analyzed this or not, but just wondering what's your take on this MOU between Alberta and Canada, whether it's in trouble or not, and where they go from here.
Well, it probably should be in some degree of trouble because, on one hand, I think Mr. Carney is trying to walk this tightrope between economic development and his climate change proclivities. And they're trying to come up with this thing. It is quite costly at the end of the day to the taxpayer. So, sooner or later, somebody's got to make a decision. We have so many, we're drowning in memorandums of understanding with other countries and other provinces and everything. And somebody put a shovel in the ground and do something for a change instead of, we're doing a lot of talk and a lot of paperwork floating around, a lot of jet fuel being burned up. I can't analyze the carbon thing because it's up in the air. It's really ethereal, and it's a way of people. It's not actually virtue signaling, but it's something like that. Well, what we're doing is we're having development, but we're making sure it's climate friendly. We're still trying to dance both sides of the street, and it's going to be problematic. They'll get something done, and the net result is it'll cost taxpayers more. That's it. Usual.
Speaking of costing taxpayers more, I noticed that on April the 1st, there was an increase in the industrial price of carbon, the industrial carbon tax. Did you follow
Yeah,
that at all?
yeah. No, I don't. I don't.
Okay. Well, we'll keep going because there's lots more to discuss. One of the other things that happened last week was the unveiling of the Ontario budget. It had some tax cuts. It had a large deficit. They put $4 billion in an investment fund. Any take on that?
Well, we've actually applied to manage part of that because we're pretty experienced in private equity. We haven't heard back from them, so maybe there's a favored few that are going to be benefiting from that. But if I look at the provincial government in Ontario, they call themselves a conservative government. They are not. They run these massive deficits. And what was also interesting last week is a combination of the province, the feds, and the city of Toronto coming up with
Right.
an $8 billion building program in areas, by the way, that Mr. Ford favors quite a bit in northern part of Toronto. Uh, but $8 billion, and by the way, throw in another $3 billion for Aboriginal benefits of some kind or other, or continuing benefits. So there's $11 billion last week just spent. $11 billion. These guys can't stop spending money. And by the way, as far as these programs go, like housing, they don't. Governments come up with programs to try to correct situations that they're responsible for in the first place. 30% of the price of a house is taxes, and then add in the regulatory burdens. It
Right.
adds significance to new housing. Why don't you just give us an $8 billion tax cut and let us figure it out? Let us spend our own money.
Why indeed. And with that, we're going to take another brief break. We'll be back with our guest after these messages. And we're back here at Boom and Bust. My guest is Thomas Caldwell. He is the founder and chairman of Caldwell Securities Limited in Toronto. Tom, I just want to continue on with the Ontario economy just for a moment. Is it where it should be? Are there warning signs or gray clouds emerging? What's your take on the Ontario economy?
Well, Ontario theoretically should be the steam engine for much of Canada, with the exception of Alberta and their tremendous energy resources. Um, I think Ontario has kind of missed it as we have as a country. Theoretically, this is the center of capital markets in our country. The capital market for new enterprise does not exist. It has been regulated out of existence. That means new enterprises have difficulty raising money in Canada. They will raise it in the United States. So what is happening is, and the younger people, we have a lot of interns in our company for the summer, and they're quite entrepreneurial now, more so than even a few years ago. If they can't raise the money beyond love capital and start a business and build a business here, they're going to do it elsewhere.
Hmm.
And I advise them to do that, because we have totally destroyed public capital markets, not only as a source of capital, but also as a means of liquidity, or as a means of investors participating in brilliant new ideas. For example, you can participate maybe in this new Starlink coming out in the United States, valued at $3 trillion. I would like to maybe even invest in that in the earlier stages. And that's just
Mhm.
an example in the US, but that's what we have in Canada. So the growth of any economy is in the entrepreneurial sector, a sector that has not only been ignored, but actually harassed and destroyed by governments
Mhm.
and their agencies, such as the commission, et cetera. Because take a look at, for example, IBM, major company. IBM missed the whole PC boom, the whole internet boom, the whole cell phone boom, everything. They missed it. It was developed by guys like Jobs working out of garages, entrepreneurial activity, etc. If you look at, say, Canada, Bell Telephone, Bell Telephone has been in the communications business forever, and they haven't benefited. Frankly, it's a loser company. The company has been a bad performer over the years. Everybody thought, oh, well, director of Bell Telephone. No, they haven't done the job. The innovation comes from new enterprises. People can think outside the box. We are not encouraging that. Therefore, we are not growing. And then throw in the usual things. Again, as Ontario is the center of economic, Toronto is its center, and it's gone. 50% of the restaurants in Toronto lose money. And I
Mm.
think what our municipal government here, and again, it's a central to Canada, is they missed the basic truism that economic progress and ease of transportation are linked. They go together. That's why cities and towns were built on rivers or on lakes, on railroads or on roads,
Mm.
so you can move goods around and people could move around. And once you turn that back to 1903, it's not that the economy stays the same, it also pulls back.
Mm.
And add into that excessive tax burdens, added in that lack of cleanliness, add to that lack of safety, we're heading downwards. We're not staying the same, Tony. We're not saying, oh,
Right.
are we, as the economy slowing down? No, we're going backwards. It's not seen yet in the tax revenues at the cities, but it's still there because the businesses underlying it aren't making money.
Yeah, and what you're saying is this is not a temporary phenomenon. This is a long-term trend. What should governments be doing to arrest or reverse this long-term trend?
I don't know. I don't know what they can do, because remember, the job of any politician is to get reelected. And the old fashioned normal way of doing that is to buy people's votes with their money. or their children's money by going into debt. And that model hasn't changed. What it requires is a change of thinking. We are demanding with the technology, we're demanding greater efficiencies. Our company is very efficient relative to what a company 10 or 20 years would be. And we've had to change our thinking, our model, how we do things. And I don't think governments have done that. They're in the old pork belly politician mode at all three levels, by the way.
Mhm.
So I'm not blaming particularly one. I'm an equal opportunity critic here.
Yeah, yeah,
So
I get it. I
they
get it.
just they don't get it. They got to change how they run government. People want efficiencies because people are getting disillusioned. They can't get ahead. Governments are crowding out enterprise. They're crowding out growth, and they don't provide it, even with all these pet projects where you see Premier Ford thumping his chest. We're listening to Canadians and we're providing housing and on and on. We need policies that encourage the contributors. Period. Get off this old way of thinking. And they like to say, oh, we're helping the poor. Well, are they really? Help poor with jobs. That's the best way of doing it.
Tom, we're going to take another brief break. We'll be back with you after these messages. Hello and welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, having a conversation with Thomas Caldwell. He is the chairman of Caldwell Securities Limited in Toronto. Tom, I want to get maybe super local for some of our viewers, but Toronto, as you know, means so much to the broader Canadian economy. What do you think about this? Have you been following this airport transfer, the Billy Bishop airport transfer to the province from the city? Doug Ford wants more jets out of Billy Bishop. Is this a good idea, bad idea?
Well, it depends on your perspective. The people that have bought their homes and condos near Billy Bishop Airport are objecting to it because they don't want more traffic down there. Jets, by the way, are generally quieter than turboprops. They use the noise argument, but it's really the frequency of flights. And I can understand it from a policy point of view, from Premier Ford's point of view. I would say as a traveler, it's a good idea, but I don't own a house nearby. But as a comment, when people bought the houses nearby or condos, they knew the airport was there.
Right.
I'm an old enough to know the vintage. When a propeller plane took off, you could hear it everywhere. Jets are way quieter. Turboprops are not quite as quiet. But the old aircraft that used to fly, it was called Norway, Little Norway, because that's where they trained Norwegian pilots. I remember Harvards when we were a trainer. When 2 or 3 Harvards flew over your street when I was a kid, you couldn't even talk. The noise was so big. So the noise argument doesn't stand. It's the frequency and the traffic, and it is quite crowded getting there. But I'll tell you, it's really convenient for the business traveler to be able to jump on that Porter bus and get to the airport and grab a plane to New York. It makes a lot of sense because it's very difficult getting out to Pearson. So it's let me put it this way. It's situational ethics.
Yeah.
Whatever side you're on, you're going to stay on it. I'm not going to convince someone of the airport it's a good idea, but I'm not going to convince somebody in business it's a bad idea. So it's really where you stand, and you got to respect everybody's position here. So sooner or later, somebody's got to make a decision for the common good, and I guess that's what governments are paid to do theoretically.
I want to broaden the next question out a little bit. There was a jury ruling last week against Meta and Google for harming young people with the social media content. Is this the beginning and the end of dominance by these social media giants, or is this just like a flea that they have to swat away?
My guess would be it's the latter. It's hard to curtail communication. And are young people really, really messed up because of social media? Absolutely. They don't know how to connect anymore. And they are fed extreme views through it because the computers, the programs will feed you what you want to hear.
Sure.
It's not helping, it's hurting. What should be a blessing is turning out to be a big problem. We get interns in our firm from different universities for the summer, and their kids are really shut down. The males more than the females. The females are still interconnected, but the males, they're afraid to say hello, or I don't know whether anybody goes on a date anymore. I don't know even that happens. And they're locked into this. And not only that, we've had a couple of summer interns really you can tell they're totally addicted to gaming all night. exhausted in the day.
Wow.
So there's a whole bunch of sociological side effects to social media, and I don't know how you get on top of it. I think this is a start, but it's like if you want to watch a bad internet thing, are you over 18? Well, you think a 15-year-old is going to say yes or no? Of course they're going to say yes.
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
it's hard to control communication. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, and obviously other jurisdictions are trying to like banning under 16-year-olds like in Australia. So there's a lot of experimentation going on to get ahead of this issue, right?
I don't know how you ban a 16-year-old from doing it. I
Mhm.
don't know how does that happen? I don't think you can say all you want, but I don't know how that works. So
Well,
it's very difficult. It's a difficult issue. Maybe it comes down to parenting. I mean, if that still is going on out there, I mean, there are no parents. Everybody wants to be their child's buddy now. I mean, as I said to one of my sons, I said, I'm not your pal. I'm not your buddy. I'm your dad. I'm here longer than everybody else,
yeah,
kind of thing. But everybody wants to be their buddy, and nobody say, no, you can't do that. We have it's a bigger issue, and
yeah, sure.
I when I have the answer, I'll come back.
Okay, we'll come back with that one. Thomas Caldwell, always a pleasure to have you on the program and to have your insights. Thanks for joining us again today.
Thank you, Tony. All the best to you.
All the best. Happy Easter.
You too. Happy Easter.
Thank you for watching today.